Welcome to the Royal Television Society and our Jed Mercurio session. I'm William Gallagher from the RTS and the Writers Guild. And just quickly, before we get started properly, I must tell you a little bit about the whole of this week's event. Organised by the Royal Television Society here in the Midlands, it is our most ambitious careers fair ever. It's a 4-day event that has brought together people from across the world of broadcasting for 6 hours of live stream sessions and masterclasses and workshops each day. Now, for making that possible, I want to say a big thank you to our sponsor, the National Film and Television School, a leading global institution who have developed some of Britain and the world's top creative talent. Now, when we're done, do please go to the RTS website, rts.org.uk, to find out more about the whole of the Careers Fair and to sign up for the remaining sessions or to catch up again on any of those that you've missed. And there is a hashtag, of course. Hashtag for the event is RTS Careers Fair. So do please natter on Twitter about us. And now, though, this is what we're here for. This is our chance to talk with writer, director, and producer Jed Mercurio. Jed, thank you very much for being here.
It's my pleasure, William. Thanks for having me.
We've obviously been sent a huge number of writing questions, most especially actually about line of duty. But before we get to those, because this is a careers fair, I want to ask you just a couple of quick questions about the industry really as a whole. It seems to me that maybe most writers stick to writing, and so we get that one perspective. You though, I mean, you're directing and you're producing as well. So could you tell me, with your sort of broader view of the industry, is this a good time to be a television writer?
Well, it's a good time to be a writer if you consider what's going on in wider society. It's one of the jobs that you can do from home. The industry is obviously going through a very difficult time at the moment with the COVID pandemic, which has severely curtailed production. So one of the few areas of the industry where people can still keep working and still keep earning is writing. So we've kind of been insulated from that this year. Obviously, if the production problems continue, then I think that we might see a knock-on effect that development will be affected because the income streams and the workflow at the broadcasters will be affected. So I think it's quite a difficult time for everybody.
You're taking time out from the set today, and when you joined us, had the mask on and everything. So you're coping with the current situation. Is everything going okay on what you're filming?
Yeah, we're shooting season 6 of Line of Duty in Belfast, and so far it's going very well, but we are taking rigorous and very detailed steps to prevent people spreading and catching the virus. So everybody's wearing a mask, we're practicing social distancing and hand hygiene, we're being regularly coronavirus tested. So it's a big operation, and everybody's just really glad to be working, and everybody's really dedicated to attempting to keep the virus out.
At some point, the virus will be gone eventually. So thinking past that, more broadly, in your own writing, have you found that becoming a director and becoming a producer has changed anything about the way you write?
I think that what specifically changes is that you start to have more influence over your work. So when I started out writing for television, I had no time on set, I had no access to cast or even to the directors once they started shooting. And when I was fortunate enough to have opportunities to produce, it meant that I was able to be in those creative conversations that involve how the scenes are going to be realised, how the dialogue is going to be said. And beyond that, if people wanted to change things, then it wasn't something that happened without my influence. I was part of those conversations. So I think that a lot of writers become frustrated if they're marginalised from the process and unilateral decisions are taken without being discussed with them about how dialogue might change or even the intention of a scene might change. So it does give you a seat at the table, and it also allows you to start embracing the technical aspects of program making that are so important for writers to understand if their careers are going to advance.
And I see, as soon as you say the technical side, that makes me think, in theory, a writer should be free to be as imaginative as he or she can, but you must consciously or unconsciously be really acutely aware of production practicality, of budgets and things. Do you find it ever limits you? No.
Well, of course. The fact is that you can write whatever you want, you can imagine whatever you want, but if you want someone to film it and perform it, then it has to be physically possible, and it has to be physically possible within a time frame and a budget level. So often writers find that they get feedback about changing locations or changing the number of people in a scene and so on. And I think that as you gain experience, you become more accustomed to that. You maybe start thinking about that, and it's something that I think ends up propelling your career forward. The more filming friendly your writing is, then the more your scripts will appeal to people.
Cool. I could ask you all afternoon questions, but let me ask some from the audience. We've had one from Instagram, somebody who calls himself Line of Duty Posts. I can't imagine what they're interested in. They want to ask, what is your favorite thing about working with the incredible trio, Vicky, Martin and Adam?
Oh, it's the fact that we all have a great sense of humour. We have so many laughs on set. You know, the work is quite hard. Sometimes it gets quite intense, but there's always a great atmosphere. Everybody's very light-hearted, and, you know, we've become firm friends over the years.
Cool. I was thinking with casts, and actually several people have asked this. Everybody says the casting is excellent, of course it is, but do you ever find yourself writing with certain actors in mind?
I think if you're doing a returning series, then you're very aware of the actors who are going to play the returning characters, and that's a huge advantage to a writer, to know the sound of their voice, their inflections, their physicality. It really helps you imagine how a particular character is going to be within a scene that you're constructing. I think it's a different thing when you consider a character that hasn't been cast yet. So we always bring in a guest lead, and in this season it's Kelly MacDonald. And when you're constructing those characters, I tend not to imagine anyone. The reason being that once you've committed to a production schedule, that's when you go and see which actors are available and which are interested and which you can afford. So you don't want to get too hung up on someone who might not then be able to be the character that you want them to be.
Actually, how does the schedule work between you writing and starting to make that kind of casting call? Do you get much time to ask around for actors?
We tend to go into pre-production a few months before we start shooting. So we try and get our main casting done well before we are committing to production. So we can make slight adjustments. We can adjust our production schedule by a week or two, one way or another, to accommodate an actor's availability. But once we're looking at smaller roles, we tend to do those once we're closer to filming.
Are you involved even with casting the smaller roles?
It depends what the role is. I think characters who are in a number of episodes and are crucial to the plot, then there's a group of us who will look at the audition tapes, the directors, the producers, me, and we'll reach a consensus. If it's a smaller part, then we're quite happy for the directors and the casting people to reach a decision.
I've been asked to ask you if there are any particular actors that you haven't worked with that you are really keen to.
No one specific. I think there's a great deal of talent out there. I'm always watching great performances in dramas on British TV. So I can dream, but the practicalities are that when you commit to a production schedule, it's all about who's available.
I'm available anytime you want. Let me just from Twitter, Pythagorean, I think that's a maths joke in there. How much did Between the Lines form the basis of the idea for Line of Duty?
I think it's Pythagorean, as in Pythagoras' theorem.
Right. Thank you. Sorry, Pythagorean. Yeah.
That's okay. Not really very much at all, to be honest. I mean, yes, there are parallels in that it's about police corruption, and it was a terrific series, but we were looking at something that was more of an ensemble. And the other thing that's a major contrast is that we have a guest lead character, and we focus a lot of attention on the person being investigated rather than the investigator.
So if I remember correctly, J.C. Wilshire, who wrote Between the Lines, it ran for 3 series and they were superb. But you've kept it going a lot longer, which actually fits in with Calvin Yard Jr. wanted to know, did you have an idea about the long-running story you've been telling in Line of Duty from the very beginning?
There was an ambition from the very beginning, absolutely. But you just don't know. You know, you do a first season, you hope, cross your fingers that it's going to be a success, that it gets favourably scheduled, that it gets publicised, the audience comes to it. And then you can begin to look ahead. So, I've had ups and downs in my career. There have been things where we have started to plan ahead, and then for whatever reason, the broadcaster has decided not to recommission. So it's kind of something which is a bit of a double-edged sword.
Can you talk about some of those ups and downs then? What were the shows that you thought should have continued more than they did?
Oh, pretty much all of them. The fact is that none of the series that I've worked on have come to an end because any of the creative people didn't want to continue. It's always been a decision that's come from the broadcaster, and almost always it's because of a change of personnel. Either the head of drama or head of comedy or the head of the channel has left, who originally commissioned the series. Someone new comes in, and they're kind of a new broom, and they drop a lot of things out of the schedule, and they want to make room for their own commissions.
In recent years, it's been possibly more with American series that when a network does drop it, that it gets shopped around other places like Netflix. Is that a realistic option for you on shows? Is that something you could pursue with something you'd like to continue?
I don't know. I mean, I think that in the UK, there's not really much of a tradition of that. It's quite rare for something to be dropped and then picked up by another channel. So I think the chances are quite slim. I think that if Line of Duty gets dropped by the BBC, I don't think it would automatically be picked up by anyone else.
I can only actually think of Men Behaving Badly swapped networks. But that was, I mean, it's a comedy, but wasn't that also around the time you were starting to get right? Can you tell us about how you got it started writing? Because you trained as a doctor, didn't you? How did you make that transition?
Yeah, I certainly didn't ever have any plans to work in TV. I responded to an advert in the British Medical Journal when I was working as a house officer. I was working in the Midlands, and it was really seeking advisors on a new medical drama that a production company had in development. And I embarked on a number of conversations with them about what my job entailed and why I felt that wasn't being represented on TV. And actually, I was incredibly fortunate that it led to them asking me to sort of put my money where my mouth is and storylining. And then they asked me to write a script. So I certainly couldn't have been more surprised to have that opportunity.
But the thing everybody remembers thinking about cardiac arrest is how shockingly different it was to everything else in that genre, and also how very real it felt. Now, clearly that's from your background, but you have a sense of reality in everything. I mean, you've never been a policeman, have you? So how do you keep that in line of duties? What that authentic feel?
Well, we're very grateful to all the guidance we get from our police advisors. When I did series one, we didn't have police advisors who are as across everything as they are now. So I did some background reading, and I met some police officers who were willing to talk off the record about anti-corruption and police operations, and we fed that into the first season. And then after that, I was contacted by an old schoolmate from my days at Cannock, who told me that he'd watched the series and he was a fan of it, and he happened to be a police inspector. And we started emailing each other, and then he became an anonymous advisor on the second season. And since then, we've expanded our team of advisors.
So, boys from Cannock, I'm from Ecot's Green, Birmingham rules, basically. That's what it is. This business, though, of your transition, I get how you became a writer, and clearly that worked out. And no question, once everybody had seen Cardiac Arrest, your career was going to zoom as a writer. But that move then into directing of production, how did that, when and how did that come about?
Again, it was something that wasn't particularly planned. With the second season of Cardiac Arrest, I became the medical advisor. I took a little bit of time off from hospital. I took a 6-month sabbatical from my senior house officer rotation program, and that allowed me to be on the set and to give advice on the medical side and basically all the aspects of hospital life that we were portraying. And that kind of served as an apprenticeship, because it's unusual for writers to be so present during the shooting of their series. So I was there working with the cast, the directors, the heads of department, ostensibly to give medical advice, but it was also a very steep learning curve. And I started to understand more about how television programs are made and how they're post-produced. And so all of that gave me a platform to then go on and become more involved as a producer / director.
Through the Writers Guild, I obviously work with lots of writers, and I can think of many who would hate the idea, the pressure of being on set or anything, and they just want to write, and that's fine. But it sounds like it's ultimately better for the drama if the writer can be more involved. Would you agree with that?
I think it's odd that writers don't want to be on set, to be honest. I know that's true. I know that lots and lots of writers, and some are very involved like me, and some aren't, and that's their own choice. But I think if you've written something and you have a vision for how it's going to be realized, and you can be of help to people who are taking that vision on, even if it's just being able to clarify certain things, what a line means, what you think the important point is in a scene, then I think that's so valuable to the production.
Yeah, it seems to me that television drama is collaboration. That back and forth is what makes it. But I would even go further than being on set and things. I know writers who like being in the edit suite at the end. I imagine as a producer, you at least sometimes do that. Do you like that? Do you fashion the story a bit in editing? Oh,
hugely, yeah. I mean, my typical day as an exec producer, as a showrunner on Line of Duty or any of the other series that I work on, is split between the set and the cutting room. I'm constantly monitoring what we're shooting, making sure we've got the material we need. If I feel something isn't right or if something's missing, then we take steps to correct that, but with either reshoots or pickups.
I realise actually, because I'm talking to you about your writing, I just assume you write everything. I'm not wrong. You don't hire you don't sublet Line of Duty to teams of writers, do you?
No, I write it all myself.
Do you ever find then, I was going to ask if you did host other writers, what do you expect from them? Do you find you expect different things from yourself, knowing, this is more what I said before earlier, being aware of the process. Are you harder on yourself as a writer because you know what has to come next?
I don't think it's a case of being harder on myself. I think it's more a case of understanding how something has to be filmed. And that's something that informs my approach to the writing. But also, it's something which isn't a draft that's set in stone. I understand how much more can be done to refine and improve the work beyond delivering the script. That being on set when actors and directors are rehearsing, we can spot things then that can be improved. And as I just said, we can also spot that from the edit and go back and change things and add more material.
Sort of a side question, but a lot of writers have a kind of shiny penny thing. We've got the commission, we're doing this, but we have a great idea of something totally different. Do you find yourself distracted into other projects, and does that ever become the next series you do?
Of course, sometimes that happens. You know, I'm in a fortunate and privileged position that I've got a series on air, and that then gives you more opportunities to do other series. But once I'm into something like Line of Duty show running, then it's a full-time job. You know, I'm on set on and off all day. I'm in the edit on and off all day. There isn't really much room to take other things on.
Going away from this, since this is the RTS Midlands career fair, would you say the Midlands is important to you as a writer? And actually, do you have any future projects that might be coming here?
Yeah, the Midlands is hugely important to me as a writer. You know, it's where I grew up. I wrote a series, The Grimleys, that was set in the Midlands, set in the Black Country. And when we started with Line of Duty, it was originally set in Birmingham, and we filmed it in Birmingham. And then pretty much at the last minute, the BBC legal advice was that we shouldn't specify that the series was set there. So we anonymised the location. Although we shot in Birmingham, we never said that that's where we were. So unfortunately, it meant as we went forward, the production was moved by the BBC away from Birmingham. We're very happy here in Belfast, but I'd love to work in Birmingham again if that's possible.
I had no idea that it was ever going to be stated to be Birmingham, but I suppose that is part of what's freed you up to move elsewhere. You can come back though anytime.
I'd love to.
I'll put the kettle on. Thinking of Birmingham and writers like this, then it seems to me that you and Stephen Knight had, I mean, quite different starts, but at the moment, there's Line of Duty, there's Peaky Blinders, there's two extraordinarily successful dramas that both started as quite low-key on BBC Two, and then it was almost word of mouth that grew and grew and grew them and made them these long-running things. Do you ever have a pint with Stephen Knight or a cup of coffee and chat about these things?
I don't really see Stephen at all. I think I've met him once or twice at awards ceremonies, and we've had a nice chat. He's a lovely guy and he's incredibly talented. But we seem to be kind of missing each other quite a lot as well.
Well, you're always working, aren't you? I asked you about this broad perspective you've got because of the directing and the producing, but at the writing stage, when it is just you and your keyboard, do you have somebody that you can talk over script problems with, or story ideas with?
Well, once we're into actually developing the series, then there is an editorial process. And it might be worth just talking through that very quickly. So what I will do is deliver an outline of each episode. So that's a document that's usually around 8 to 10 pages long. And I deliver that to the editorial team, which is the script editors. There's usually 2 script editors. And then Simon Heath, who's the creative director at World Productions. And we then have a meeting and they give feedback on the content of that episode. And then based on that feedback, I then include that in my approach to the first draft of the script. Then I deliver the draft. We have more meetings where it's notes giving and feedback, and we just go forward until everybody's sufficiently happy with the script that we can move on to the next episode. And we just go like that all the way through the episodes of the season until we achieve shooting scripts.
In a way, that makes it sound like it has to be a kind of a machine. Bits delivered by certain times. It doesn't feel like it's sausage making exactly, but presumably you have limits of how long you can spend just pondering what an episode will be.
Oh, completely. I think if you're just in development, you're not working towards a particular production date, then actually you can take as long as you want. If you're creating a new series and you're developing a pilot script and you're hoping to get a green light from the broadcaster to go into production, that's a process that can take a year, 2 years, it doesn't really matter. But once you're at that point where the series is green lit and you've committed to a delivery date to the broadcaster, then you're working to deadlines, and it's absolutely part of your professionalism that you have to hit your deadlines. It's actually quite harmful to a production to have late scripts. It means people can't prepare, they can't find the right locations, they might be rushing to cast the right people, the directors and everybody else involved don't have enough time to prepare, and it all becomes very rushed and chaotic. And some of the series in recent years that have famously suffered from late scripts have ended up being quite significantly harmed by them.
With my Writers Guild hat on, I have to think, why is the writer probably the least paid person in the whole thing when everything rests on the scripts?
Well, that's not true.
Okay.
I mean,
which bits?
Well, the writer is the least well-paid person involved. I think a lot of people who work in production on the crew don't earn a huge amount of money.
That's a good point.
Yes, of course, you know, the very high profile cast do, but writers' earnings in terms of the scripts that are being produced probably exceed what the directors will get paid. The fact also is that the realities of production are that 1 day of filming in primetime TV costs far more than it costs for 1 hour of script.
That makes sense. I think I was thinking giant, $100 million budgets, and the writer getting paid. Yeah. But speaking
that's
of
that's not the UK industry.
No. And that's not television really either, is it? Do you prefer, I mean, you've directed feature lengths. Have you directed films? Written films?
I've directed some TV films, some TV singles, but I've not worked in cinema, no.
Would you be tempted to?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I think that there are great opportunities, and if it was, the right director or the right project, then I'd love that opportunity.
Saying opportunities, let me ask something. Another question that's come in, a very practical one. Paul Aris over Twitter emailed to say, I've been shortlisted in major script writing competitions, and I was a shadow writer for Paul Abbott and Shameless, but I haven't actually broken through, and I'm now 62. Being honest, would I be taken seriously at this age?
Yes, you absolutely would be taken seriously, because what really matters is the quality of your writing.
Great. So if somebody was just to pick a figure out of the air, 54, that'd be fine as well.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm 54, and yes, it's It all depends on what you can deliver on the page. It's got nothing to do with how old you are or what you look like or what gender you are.
What about, we get a lot of people going through writing courses in universities and things. Did you do any writing courses?
That's a great question, actually, because I kind of did it sort of backwards. So I've been working on cardiac arrest and was fortunate enough to get it on air. And then when it got recommissioned, which kind of took me by surprise, because I honestly didn't expect that it would have a future. Then I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe I ought to learn a little bit more about writing. And so I read and I did some of those kind of weekend workshops, the story structure workshops. And I think they can be useful. I think that all of them have their pros and cons. There is no overall perfect model for writing, and a lot of those structure gurus claim there is, and they're wrong. But if you can find inspiration in some of their ideas that help your writing, then that's great.
I once interviewed Alan Plato, who said he rarely ran courses, but he did one. And there was one man in it who just said, can I sit at the back and do nothing? I did, and it turned out to be the guy who wrote Billy Elliot afterwards, based on that course. Just being given the space and the permission kind of allowed it for it.
That's great.
You never run writing courses then yourself, fit them into your schedule?
I haven't, that's true. And that's something that has only really happened in an informal way. You know, occasionally I'm invited to be a guest speaker at writing courses and try and give sort of the benefit of my experience in actually writing for TV. I think that there is kind of a wide industry in terms of writing courses, and I think there's great variability in the quality. But as I said, I think that there isn't an overall writing course that will turn you into a writer. You have to just borrow some ideas from writing courses that help you, and you may hear some things that you don't agree with that don't help you, and those are things that I think you can safely ignore.
What about learning by watching? Are there particular writers that you would recommend the works of?
Not particularly specific writers, but I think that it's hugely important that if you have the ambition to work in television, that you are up to speed on what's going on. So watching the current dramas or comedies or whatever genre you work in. And I think it's really important, particularly to bear that in mind if you're having meetings. You know, if you're pitching your work, then often in those settings, people will bring up things that your work reminds them of, or maybe there may be some subject crossover that may be relevant to how your work might be taken forward. And it just helps your appearance of professionalism that you've seen the new dramas that have premiered that week, you're familiar with the most successful dramas and so on.
It strikes me that getting into a pitching meeting is very difficult at the early stages. It certainly used to be that writers were told you had to go through the soaps, and there's obviously certain advantage to that. You demonstrate, you deliver, there's practical things for it. You didn't go through that route, and I think the more different routes there are in, the better variety of writing we get. But outside of the kind of machinery of a soap, how can a new writer get to pitch? Who do they get to pitch to?
Again, I think that's a great question. And the truth of it is that there are all kinds of different opportunities. There's no one established route that will get you to where you want to be. I think working within the soaps is great for a couple of reasons. It gives you the experience of working within a collaborative setup. It gives you the experience of seeing your work realized, and it also keeps you earning. You know, the practicalities are that if you want to be a full-time writer, then you have to earn. And so having the opportunity to write episodes of existing series is probably the best way to do that. But alongside that, then I think if you want to create your own series, then you need to harbour that ambition. You need to squirrel away at your own original work by writing spec scripts, by writing things that people can read and you can use as a basis for meetings. And as you develop contacts, as you send material to people, then you'll get more opportunities to pitch your original ideas.
Actually, when you said that, it makes me think that in theory there are more opportunities now because there are more platforms rather than channels. But that makes me think your shows seem very British. That you couldn't just transplant them to Chicago or something. I mean, not without a lot of work. Is there a pressure on you to have some sort of more international appeal because television gets shown everywhere, or co-production financing comes from everywhere?
Again, it varies, William. I think there are some projects which are conceived as being international, and they require international settings, international casts, and that really derives from the co-producers who are involved. They want things that work for their territory but will distribute to other territories and make them money. But I think also there's still a lot of commissioning that is about specificity. It's about things having a national identity or even a regional identity. And that's still a very important part of the industry.
Well, there you go then. You should put Birmingham back in line of duty. That's clearly what you should do. Actually, I've got to end with some more line of duty questions, if you don't mind. Cameron Yard Jr., you asked earlier, he just wanted to know, can you take in how successful Line of Duty and Bodyguard have been?
Well, I'm very grateful to the people who've watched, and the fact we've got such great fans who create fantastic word of mouth. And so, of course, we recognise the fact that that helps us with our relationship with the broadcaster. The appreciation that we get from our fans means that the broadcaster keeps supporting these programmes and gives us the opportunity to do more. So really, it's kind of a virtuous circle.
Ros Laws from the RTS, basically she wants spoilers. Do you know exactly how Line of Duty will ultimately end?
Yes.
Right. And it's just us here. You could, okay. Have you got it all planned out to that ending?
As an overview, yes. In terms of detail, no.
So you wouldn't, for example, she asks, do you have a set number of episodes in mind to tell the story you want to tell, but you don't? It sounds more flexible than that.
The answer to that is that we would figure out the number of episodes based on the detail.
Not to rush the ending of Line of Duty, but are there times when you would like to be on to the next show? Because you've had a lot of this, really, and it sounds like an overwhelming workload. Would you like something completely fresh tomorrow, please?
Well, actually, I'm in this very fortunate position, William, which is I can do other things and then come back to Line of Duty, as we did with Bodyguard, and also earlier in the Line of Duty history, I did Lady Chatterley's Lover and I did Critical. So the fact is that I'm not doing Line of Duty year in, year out. There are gaps in between, and those do allow me to explore other ideas.
When you say that, other ideas, though, I mean, obviously I know all your credits, I've watched your shows, but it's only just now you're saying that occurs to me that you're quite unusual in you do crime drama, you do, well, Lady Chatterley, can we call it romantic? It's not very romantic, but it's not crime. And you do comedy with the Grimleys and things. Do you find that there's a pressure on you to be pigeonholed into a certain type of genre, and you fight against that?
Again, that's a great question, and I think it's something that applies to all writers. You know, if you have success in a particular genre, then I think you will obviously be considered more marketable within that genre. But also, I think that you need to reflect on it yourself. Is there a reason why you've been successful in that genre? Is it that you have a specific aptitude, and should you play to your strengths? Or is it that actually you have other strengths and you would enjoy doing something fresh? So from my viewpoint, I'm very content with the work I'm doing. I think that I enjoy writing thrillers and I enjoy crime as a genre, and I'd be very happy to continue and even develop other ideas that are within the same space. It really depends if something came along which was very different and excited me as a writer or as a director or whatever. And I think it's the same for every writer. You have to enjoy your writing. And if you find an idea that you really love spending time with, then of course you should pursue it.
Cool. That sounds like the perfect point to stop. Listen, Jed Mercurio, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Good. Can I also thank Daniel Garn and Lola Zwaga for making this happen. Plus, of course, our sponsor on the RTS Careers Fair, the National Film and Television School. And thank you too for watching. And do remember, please, to check out the rest of the Careers Fair at rts.org.uk.